Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. We've got a Basis News important update on RAF Machrihanish coming up very soon. But initially, this is November the 11th. It's in the evening. And we've had news just in the last couple of hours that a lot of MPs in London have campaigned and are demanding that the government ends this lockdown because it's damaging so many people's lives and business in this planned lockdown. You've got to understand that this is all these governments are following a script as laid down in the Rockefeller Foundation 2010 report on the future of mankind. It's not its exact title, but the basic essence is you have one lockdown, you let people out, give them a breather, and then you hit them with another lockdown. And that is designed as an economic weapon to cause as much disruption and destruction of our lives as possible. The context of this has to be viewed in two basic goalposts. The last goalpost, or one side, is the 2045 agenda, so that in about 22 years' time, we'll be coming out of a double cold spell from the sun, and that's two cycles, that's 22 years. And around about then, we're going to be in our pretty well lowest ebb before we then have another few hundred years of increasing warmth and then dipping into it depends what happens at the end of the second solar cycle. That's in 22 years time. If we come out of that and the temperatures start to go up, good. If the temperatures don't start to go up and it continues into a third cold spell, that is then really talking serious ice age. As opposed to just skating on the River Thames and so forth, as has happened before. Now, the context of this is another little fact, that when I interviewed Stuart Sverdlow a few years ago, when he was in London, he mentioned that essentially the controlling elite, the powers that be, that everybody reports to through the Pindar, which is stuff that Max and James Casbolt all talked about, has changed. We are essentially under new ownership of the planet. So if you look at what's going on in that context, if you look at the 2045 agenda, the 2045 agenda essentially is a timetable for when humans and all living things will exist as an avatar in a matrix of some kind and not actually have physicality anymore. There will be no need to have us living in a physical world. We'll be all scanned, downloaded, and in an avatar, as an avatar, like in the movie Avatar. But this will not be in physical 3D. We'll be existing in, or what they want to do is transfer all existing life, which is all part of the British Telecom project Soulcatcher. These are all projects which are essentially taking humans and all living things into a totally controlled matrix of complete control outside 3D space. That's in the computerized world. So on top of that, we've had intelligence which are saying that the entire Chinese species has essentially been taken over completely by an AI. So this is all very serious. So what we're looking at here is a situation where, and I'm going to queue up this report with Dave now, and we're talking about essentially the elite, all the governments of the world, because they're all talking off the same script, Operation Lockstep. They're all talking the same thing. They're all talking as if they've been scared shitless. And they're all totally treacherous to all of the peoples around the world. And there's no point looking at this in isolation in the UK or the United States, where Trump has essentially been used by deep state or by the white hats to essentially be the figurehead to take out all those who essentially took control of the United States during the Kennedy assassination, which is a bit of a sidestep on this. Essentially, we're talking about the complete wipeout of all living things on this planet in the 3D organic world. And they want to put us into a little box in a matrix. And that's basically the deal. These bastards who are being totally treacherous against their own species have obviously been given some kind of "you'll be all right, Jack" situation, which will allow them, or that we'll be okay, but we'll screw the rest of all living things here. And that's basically what's going on. That's my analysis of that, based on a couple of little things. In other words, the existing global elite have to clear the store because the new owners want to take over and they don't want us around. And it's that simple. We're talking a vaccination which will terminate human reproductive capabilities immediately. It'll be expensive, it'll be very profitable, but you're looking at an end within 22 years of the ability of human beings and all other living things to reproduce correctly, if at all. And there'll be a few kept over, aka or reference the George Guidestones. That's essentially it. So we'll end this little report, this report on what's going on and all the things which have happened. We're visited today by a veteran UFO researcher called David Moncoeur, and he has been in the business like myself quite a long time, and he's got a few things to say about the Chinook shoot down. This is when there was a Chinook flying. This is the twin helicopter, big helicopter, which was flying out of Aldergrove to a meeting at RAF Machrihanish, and they crashed on the way, and they hit the Mull of Kintyre. Now, there's another researcher which is mentioned in this report, which I won't mention her name again, but there was a report that they discovered or was given, and it was called Most Secret, not Top Secret. And there's a discussion in this with Dave about why the Americans do not want the British to use the term Most Secret. They want us to use the term Top Secret. And there's no love lost between the British people on this and the Americans. And shortly after this event, where all those strategically important intelligence, special branch, all sorts of very key people, which had an awful lot of information on Sinn Féin and the IRA, which you remember are DVD German operatives by the dark side of the Illuminati. They were all taken out, and then miraculously, peace was available. In other words, anybody who knew anything about anybody was taken out in that helicopter crash. What David is talking about is that a man with a van who was sacked out of the army after having a major UFO incident was asked to bring a van, just any van, to RAF Machrihanish. And he saw the crashed wreckage of the Chinook helicopter and another aircraft. The term missile was used. So in essence, those police and intelligence officers were shot down. The pilots were blamed. Now, a lot of people, the late Graham Birdsall did stuff on this. There was a campaign to back the pilots who were blamed for this crash, when it was a deliberate shoot down involving a missile of some kind from a small boat or ship which was known to be in the area, and it came down at the Mull of Kintyre, and the wreckage was then brought to RAF Machrihanish, which is a known northern outpost base of the secret space program, which is controlled from the primary controller by US Navy down in Cornwall. Anyway, on the 11th of November 2020, this is Dave Moncoeur. Well, hello, David.
Oh, hello there, Miles.
David, we're in a lockdown situation, so we're standing greater than 1 meter away.
That's groovy.
You've come the whole way down from Scotland, and we were looking at some UFO photographs about Carlisle. There's an investigator up there, and you've got those photographs just to your left there. But,
yeah, I've seen them. Very interesting.
Essentially about the nuclear power stations up there being a front for some kind of ET craft recycling, repurposing, where this various MOD base is there, and the researcher there is saying that they bring down UFOs, repurpose them for this secret space program, and away you go. Now, the thing is that there's another investigator up there called Sharon Larkin, and she's been doing a lot of work as well in that area over years and years. But you know something about a major crash of a Chinook helicopter which happened at the Mull of Kintyre, is that right?
Yes, Sharon especially investigated that. I did meet her quite a number of times. In fact, so frequently that her crowd over in Workington think my Scottish accent's no longer there, and I'm more Cumbrian sounding than Scottish sounding. So, like, Sharon did go up to the Machrihanish base, and she did think, like, the locals there were thinking there were two objects in the sky, kind of, before the crash. This is, the public maybe should know that 25 IRI experts were on this Chinook in June 1994, and it suddenly mysteriously crashed, exploded, and they were all killed. All of them with golf clubs.
A huge number, I think it's even 30 years ago now. This contained a lot of special branch, Secret Service people who all had the information, and they were about
the pilots
the IRA
and everything.
And Sinn Féin and the terror situation going on in Northern Ireland. And then shortly after this crash, which is terribly tragic, a so-called peace process and a whole lot of other things started to happen. So that's the context.
Well, I certainly think that's the political context that you would read in the newspapers was the top secret scenario is a lot more problematic. The question of what brought down the Chinook. It seems to have been another object, but actually Sharon Larkin got posted a top secret military document which refers to another object in the air, and they just seem to not like Sharon finding out about it.
Could you explain about that again? What's this second object? What's this document?
Just simply, it refers very vaguely, and I wasn't really wanting to use the term that it uses in the military document to be able to
use all the terms we know. Just give us everything. It's a rare opportunity to have you down here.
Okay, it was referred to as an uncorrelated track. So, apart from people thinking they're all knowledgeable and using the word the acronym UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena, they definitely have not been using that for a UFO. The definite, more top secret term for a UFO has been uncorrelated track, referring, of course, to a radar manifestation. So anyway, that to jump to get away from talking about Sharon, to go back a few years to around about 1996 when I became friendly with someone who had reason to be interested in the UFO incident, the UFO aspect of our lives. He and two other army guys had been dismissed from the army as if purely and simply because they had watched a UFO. They were convinced that it was an alien craft.
Where was it?
Northumberland, a military base in Northumberland near Newcastle. I think Bulmer, possibly Bulmer. You know that base? Bulmer military base. And Paul said that the flying triangle hopped from underground bunker to underground bunker. So it wasn't flying like a helicopter. It wasn't flying like an airplane. It was more like an insect skipping across the surface of water. You know, these ice skater insects. It was hopping about like that. So Paul and his friends were totally convinced they'd seen an alien craft. After that had been seen, they were called to the office by by an officer, and they were more or less dismissed mysteriously. The military did not even like them having seen it, and they didn't want to have those guys talking to the other soldiers about it. Very mysteriously.
Immediate discharge from the army.
Or yes, that's right. They cooked up a load of shit that was a load of crap. I can't remember what Paul said was the charge, but all three of them were charged with having committed the crime simultaneously, and even that sounds silly. They couldn't possibly commit the same crime simultaneously, so it was obviously because of the UFO. Anyway, forgetting that incident in Paul's life, Paul had to get another job, and he got a job in a garage. And he ended up doing a job which again was military connected, but he repeatedly refused the offer of the job. He was working in a garage, and during a particular day working in the garage, they were asked to...
And this is Edinburgh, is it?
In Edinburgh, yeah. Probably around the Blackhall area. It's where the garage is, but anyway. Paul was asked, to drive a van to the Machrihanish base, which is near to which the Chinook helicopter crashed, and it's where the Chinook helicopter was flying to when the crash happened. Well, Paul was asked to drive a van there, but he refused at first, and all the other workers in the garage all refused to drive the van to Machrihanish base.
Why
they just didn't want to do the job.
Was that a different type of job that they were given out of the norm? Or what?
Well, I thought it was awkward that they were asking the guys to drive the van to the base, leave the van, then just find their way back to Edinburgh, which obviously they'd have to get a mixture of buses and trains.
Can you explain how desolate the area is where Machrihanish is?
Well, Machrihanish is...
if you're driving to another city or something.
Machrihanish is named after a Gaelic word for the grassy area, which is lower than sea level, but inland, just inland. So they have a Gaelish word which is Machiar. You know the Spanish jota, Machair, Machiar. They've got a word for that type of inland land, which is lower than sea level and kind of very grassy and boggy, but it's not swamped, it's not undersea. So Machrihanish is named. The name relates to conveying that type of land. It's very barren, kind of difficult to walk over. It would need to be kind of churned up by the military, turned into the longest airstrip in the whole of Europe, is what Machrihanish has, which is why it's a landing space for the Aurora, which is what Paul found out. So
now,
Paul,
I have to say,
yeah,
one of the reasons why we came up with this conversation is because I've dug up a report by Sky News about 20 years ago about the Aurora and about Machrihanish. We're going to watch that after this.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's incredible. Well, Paul, of course, didn't know whether he'd be believed, but bear in mind that Paul was the last person to want to deliver this van, but he ended up doing it because everybody else refused. Of course, he'll be getting an overtime rate of pay. So, Paul, I'm not saying his full name, of course. Paul delivered the van to Machrihanish and had to drive all through the night to land it, to deliver it there at 4 o'clock in the morning. He got in about 4, half 4. Still, it must have been the height of summer because it was relatively good daylight even around that area in Scotland, so it must have been the height of summer. And as he was driving it in, what?
The sun would rise about 3:30.
Yeah, as he was driving it in, he thinks the Aurora was landing. So he thinks, he compared it in his mind immediately as he was driving in. He was comparing it immediately with the flying triangle that had hopped around over the various military bunkers around Mulmer. And he's thinking, no way was the most, I've seen the most, his words to me were, I've seen the most advanced human craft, and it's the Aurora. It looked all completely silver, yeah.
Can you give any further descriptions as to what he saw as the Aurora?
He thought it was all completely silver underneath, mirror-like, as if that was a good idea to make it like less easily seen. But he still spotted it, and it stopped quite quickly there, quicker than usual. But no way did it stop as suddenly as the flying triangle did. That was obviously checking out.
But what did it look like? Did it look like what shape? Triangular, twin tails, one tail, size, any descriptions like that?
I think it was more arrowhead-like. It wasn't triangular. You could tell the difference. It was not, not an equilateral triangle by any means. It was more the, two equal sides and a short base kind of shape. That's all I remember from him. He didn't go much more into that because Paul wanted to talk more about the mysteriousness of the fact that as he was driving in the van, driving it in to report it, the delivery to the high command, he parked it and he drove past the remains of the Chinook crashed helicopter, and he drove past also the other thing which had smashed into it. I think possibly a missile had been shot at it personally, but it was referred to as an uncorrelated track in a military document that was posted rather naughtily to Sharon at her home in Workington.
What was so special about this van?
I don't know. I don't know what was special about the van. Maybe it was just a random van. They just ordered another van and asked any old van to be delivered to them.
It would seem that the contents of the van was the driver, and they wanted it to see them.
Well, maybe so, maybe not. But on the other hand, all the other guys in the garage were refusing to do the delivery.
Maybe they'd been told.
Well, they might have been.
Why would he, who's seen this object and been fired out of the military, be asked to bring an empty van, any old van, to Machrihanish?
No, it will have been a brand new van.
Drive past this wreckage, which is a highly contested secret. There's lots of people lost their careers trying to blow the whistle on this.
Yeah.
Graham Birdsall, I think, the late Graham Birdsall, was leaned on over this story, Machrihanish.
Was he?
The crash.
What was his information about it?
Well, he was trying to publish stuff obviously at the time about the true cause, because there was a legal case to try and
it didn't crash into the mountain. That's a load of rubbish.
Yeah, well, the pilots were blamed for crashing, and their families.
That's even more total rubbish.
Well, their families were trying to exonerate those brave men who were killed.
Well, they'd like to see the military document. It's interesting that most secret is at the top of it, so they don't use the word top secret. They use the word most secret, which Americans had ordered the British not to use on their top secret documents in 1943 during the Second World War.
They had been told
to cease using the term top secret.
They'd told to be stopped. They'd been ordered by the American government to stop using the term most secret at the top of their top secret documents. The British were always putting most secret at, it's a British sounding way of putting things.
Most is certainly not top.
Well, most secret was at the top of it. I think it conveyed, I theorised about it, I think it conveyed an antagonism between the Americans and the American military and the British military. And bear in mind that Sharon Larkin found out that the Americans on Machrihanish base were all kicked out of Machrihanish after the Chinook incident. That's what she said. That's what Sharon said.
Well, if you had a Chinook helicopter full of a lot of very important secret people who had lots of very specialised knowledge, and it was shot down by a US missile of some kind fired from a ship or boat, which some of the report says it was in the Irish Sea at the time and could have shot it down, the British might actually tell them where to go. And also bearing in mind that Machrihanish is part of the secret space program Coastal Command, commanded from Cornwall.
Well, I don't know about that. I can only know what I'm saying here.
Is there any place? Is this guy still around? Can you still talk to him?
Well, probably would be. I don't know if he would contact you if this got a bit of
publicity. Did you get
publicity.
this information?
It was about 1996. I was meeting Paul every so often. We were going to the same Theosophical Society meetings.
Yeah.
That he happened to have that story to tell. I suppose he'd be interested in seeing Sharon Larkin's most secret document. You've got to get to the point of the most secret document. It's the antagonism between the US military and the British military, and I've been told that's a serious issue by other people, by other contacts.
Well, the American military are obviously top dog. They've got the money, the Brits don't. In the same way that we had our, is it the TR3? The beautiful, down here near Boscombe Down, it was built, the British multi-purpose jet in the 60s, which was trashed and burned by order of the Americans.
Why did they order that?
It's not a TR3, maybe it's a TR1 or some initial.
Right, and that
big jet, yeah. Really fantastic jet. In the same way the
Designer
Canadians
bracket.
had their Avro multi-purpose jet, which if it flew today would still outstrip performance of most jets around today because it had the range and the fighter performance of patrolling all of Canada, which is a huge area.
Yeah, the Americans seem to take a bullying attitude towards the British.
Well, they went up to the Canadians and took the titanium pressing plant from the Canadians and pulled it down. Pulled those titanium pressing plants that Avro had, and they used it to build the SR, the big American jet, black thing, huge engines.
Yeah, I know what you're meaning. Yeah.
So that's called bullying.
Yes, it's bullying of the Canadians who are, they famously have had a hell of a lot of Scottish Prime Ministers. Scottish surnamed Prime Ministers or something. So kind of like every single president's had an Irish surname and every single Canadian president's had a Scottish surname.
Oh, I haven't noticed that.
Yeah, that's supposedly a thing about Canadian. Not in recent terms, though, Barack Obama is obviously not Irish, but kind of up to a certain point of time. But only relatively few years ago, all Canadian presidents had been Scottish surnamed, and all American presidents had been Irish.
You had Trudeau in the 60s.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a side discussion in many respects. Anything further you can add to this? I mean, it'd be really great to hear. I mean, we've known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
After all this time, you finally come up with something you knew about 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I know the guy was a bit nervous about the story. Uh, there's a hell of a lot of little anecdotes at the back of my mind that keep surfacing.
Well, thank you very much. You've just come down from Edinburgh,
Yeah,
Scotland,
yeah,
and you're relaxing.
yeah. That's right. I've been enjoying staying down here. Booked in at a hotel in Richmond. I'll be meeting up with a couple of friends, graduates from Edinburgh University in Richmond soon.
You're going there this afternoon or tonight, so thanks for your brief visit down at Bases HQ and talking about
Okay,
RAF.
and I'll make sure we have a bit of Wadsworth beer down us before we go.
Yes, it would be rude to visit devices and not have some water with me.
That's true. Very
Okay,
true.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Miles.
Well, that's that. There's a lot of information there. I got the date wrong. I think it's 94. That Sky News documentary, Above Top Secret. Or sorry, No Defense Significance. I've got it on VHS here. A lot to think about, a lot going on. Bye for now.